Hey everyone, Rose here, and I've been working on making some updates to the channel. I haven't really made any major changes to the channel since I started it back in 2018, and I think it was high time that I make some tweaks. So I made a new intro, which you just saw, and a couple of sprites that I can put up on screen when I'm talking and there isn't really anything going on. I noticed in a couple of my videos where I had a longer intro or something like that, that it would just be a kind of empty screen with nothing really happening for quite a while. So, as you've probably figured out already, today's time-lapse is of me making the sprites. I started out with a rough sketch of the first kind of basic pose, and when I was happy with that, I made a copy of the layer and then tweaked it to make a second pose. Somewhere around this point I decided to make the whole set kind of modular. So I had a set of different faces and a set of different bodies, and I can just like switch them around. So I separated the heads and the bodies into two separate groups and then started duplicating them again and making more variations with a bunch of different poses and facial expressions. I'm duplicating and tweaking parts instead of starting over just to save some time since I have a bunch of them to make, and also to keep the consistency a bit better. If I were to try and redraw everything again, it would just take a bunch of effort to make sure they all have the same proportions and stuff like that. I occasionally flip the canvas by pressing M to look at the drawings with a fresh pair of eyes and make sure the symmetry and stuff is alright. And I continue this whole process until I have a bunch of different heads and bodies all sketched out. Now I have a bunch of sketches I'm happy with, so I move on to line art. It took me a couple of attempts, but I finally figured out a kind of style that I like, so I went on with that. I make a separate group for each individual piece, so that way I can put the line art in that, as well as another layer for the color, and later another layer for the stripes. Once I'm happy with the lines, I go back in, add the second layer for the color, and just fill it in with a basic whitish. And then I move on to the next piece. Just like I did for the sketch, instead of redrawing each individual piece, I duplicate parts and then edit them to fit the different poses. with the line art done, it's time for the color. I decided to color them in several passes, starting with the orange and white base. I simplified her colors and patterns down a little bit to fit with a simpler line art style. In this base layer, I also add the eye color and the nose and mouth. In order to help me keep the colors and patterns consistent, I copied over the first version I had made of the head and put it to the side so that I can reference it for the other ones. With the first layer of the heads done, I move over to the body. I add in a couple of lines I had forgotten in the line stage and then move on to adding color. I don't usually use the paint bucket tool very often, mostly because my style is more painterly, but I found it quite practical to use here. It also has a couple of really helpful features, such as allowing you to expand the selection, that make it easier to get the fill clean and to not have these weird awkward white edges that you sometimes get. Now it's time for the stripes. Since the style here is a lot simpler than the one on my ref sheet, I simplify the stripes a bit but try and keep them as recognizable as possible. It took a bit of fiddling around to figure out what was important and what was not, but eventually I got to a point that I quite like. So I repeat the whole process on all the other faces. And finally I add the last couple of stripes on her chest and belly, as well as a couple of minor shadows. Now I'm adding some final details to the eyes, and they're done. And here they all are. I made a total of 7 different expressions and 5 different bodies. I'll probably make a few tweaks and add a few more as time goes on, but for now I'm really happy with how they look. You can definitely look forward to seeing them more in future videos. And that's all from me for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe and all that. There are also a couple of other videos to the side that you might enjoy too. If you're interested in seeing more of my art or getting a commission, I have links for all that in the description, along with a link to the Discord where you can see some stuff early or just hang out and chat or share some of your own art. Anyway, see you all next time.